Morning, everyone. We're joined today by a special guest, Sarah Hammond, who is the Senior Corporate Sustainability Manager at the Trainline. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, hi everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us for this Green Careers sort of week special video. And we're going to explore a bit about your role and your background, and also a bit more about the train line as well, because I guess people have maybe used the train line to buy tickets, but it'd be really interesting to dig a bit more into how the train line is sort
hmm
of achieving sustainability and it is a green kind of organization and company. So Sarah, yeah, your job title, Senior Corporate Sustainability Manager, what does it mean?
Yeah, so the corporate's there for a reason. So kind of what my role really means is looking after our operating model and how we operate as a business. So our policies, our processes, our compliance, the suppliers that we choose. It's very much focusing on that side of the business as opposed to more of the customer facing kind of business model side. We have a brand team, a brand sustainability team actually who look after that. So there's this piece around what we deliver to customers and how we want to inspire them to use the train and get out of planes and out of cars and use trains. And that's very much the brand focus. Whereas I look after when actually it comes to delivering that product. So the tech solution that is Trainline when you book your ticket, what suppliers are we working with? Are we proud to use them? Are we ensuring they have science-based and net zero reduction targets themselves? Are they using renewable energy? So that when we're saying to customers, hey, use our app, actually, if they said, well, that's all good and well, and you're talking about sustainability, let me just kind of dig a little bit deeper and see how you've managed to run your business. That's when my kind of world comes into it in terms of how we operate, who we work with, our policies, and all of those pieces. Um,
Yeah.
a big other part of it is compliance schemes, which is a lot of letters and yeah, there's multiple kind of compliance schemes in terms of government regulations that we have to make sure we adhere to, which are great and are great for the industry. So I look after all of those as well.
As a company, then, what's the biggest impact? Is it sort of energy, or what's the biggest thing maybe that's having an impact on yeah, climate?
Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to the impact on the environment, people still majorly focus on carbon and on greenhouse gases, which makes sense. You've got a lot of other things to think about in terms of biodiversity and waste, but actually for us as a business, greenhouse gases is the main focus for us. And when it comes to scope one, which is what we have direct control over, that's literally just gas use in our offices, which is tiny at 0.41% of our overall greenhouse gas footprint.
Hmm.
So the difference we can make there isn't huge. And then when it comes to scope two, which is our energy use, that's 1.9% of our emissions. So then when it's scope three, which is where we spend our money and our indirect emissions through the suppliers that we work with, and also through the actions that we take in terms of business travel and employee travel, that's 97% or 97.69, I think, percent of our emissions. So that is a huge focus for us. So a massive part of my role is working on that and working on our science-based target in relation to scope three, whilst you can make a lot more difference with scope one and two because you have that control and
Mm.
we are taking steps to make a difference. We are moving offices soon for our major office in London to an office which we've got renewable energy in the contract. It uses heat pumps, it has solar panels, and we're hoping that that will mean once we've done some modelling that we hit our scope two target for reduction of emissions there, which would be great. But a massive part of my role is working with suppliers and holding them to account and essentially making sure that we are spending our money with those who we feel proud to work with and who actively will reduce our emissions indirectly.
Just then to make this clearer to a kind of teacher audience, it's really useful that you've talked about those scope one, two, and three. But in terms of scope three, then that you're saying is your largest proportion of emissions, what kinds of can you give some sort of tangible? There's this thing that we are purchasing, and that's a big source of emissions. Or well, yeah,
Yeah, so a big example of it will be, and I think it's really interesting, and I feel like I've deep dived there
yeah,
quite
we've
quick.
jumped in really
And
deep
it's
quickly there, but it's
this
it's
is
fine. It's good.
this is yeah, this is the lesson of a sustainability person, I think, sometimes to make sure you take it to the right level. But um, so Trainline as a business is literally the ticket seller. So I think some important context is actually the train journeys themselves aren't included in our greenhouse gas footprint because they would run with or without us. Um, we sell the ticket, but the trains will still happen. You could buy a ticket elsewhere. You should buy them on Trainline, but you could buy them elsewhere. And so in terms of that scope three piece being such a large part, it is literally any supplier that we use to then create the products. So think about where we store our data.
Hmm.
That is one of our suppliers. We spend money with them. We know that we are directly benefiting from them existing as a business because they are storing our data and that benefits us. So the only way we can make change is by saying, look, you will get our business and therefore our money if you do and have X, Y, Z. And so a big piece is holding suppliers to account. So storing our data, our payment provider, in terms of when you make a purchase on Trainline, that's another example of a supplier, who we rent our offices from, who cleans looks after and maintains our offices, our office equipment. There's so many different examples of the suppliers that essentially enable us to run our business. And it's everything from the big kind of, data storage, suppliers to kind of, office maintenance, everything in between.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting lesson though for teachers and for anyone really is that sense of actually where you where you who you bank with in terms of where you store your money and kind of how that's being invested in
Yeah.
terms of pensions, and it's one that people often don't really associate because like you say the tangible stuff is the am I driving my car and kind of where am I, what
Mm,
heating have I got in
mm.
my house, but
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
though it's those things that can have a far more significant impact and often are a bigger source of emissions and impact on the rest of nature.
Yeah. And it's so true you say that actually, because the two things I always say when I do our welcome aboard sessions when people join Trainline is the two biggest things you can do in your life if you want to help with sustainability is where you spend your money and the questions that you ask. So when I'm in a room with a supplier who wants to work with us and I start saying, well, what have you done? What's your commitment? If you are so committed, why did you leave, or why haven't you signed up to an alliance working on sustainability and XYZ? And it might not make change happen right there in the room, but it will get people thinking. Similarly, if you ask questions to your friends, your family, you have to do it in a kind of positive way. But
Mm,
why didn't you think of vintage for that? You probably could, save quite a bit of money if you were going to another source. And I think the questions that you ask are really, really powerful, but you have to do them in a way that inspires rather than
mm.
yeah, kind of tells off. I think that's an important part of sustainability as well.
Is that then a key approach within the train line? Is that purposeful that you do as an organization as well?
Yes, I think so. It's something I try to do a lot because with it, I'm kind of one person really looking after sustainability and I don't have a team. And to an extent, I think that's appropriate because sustainability is everyone's. So really, I see my role as trying to find those flames of where sustainability can get involved and kind of, turn them into something great and something where sustainability is a key feature in the room and it's being brought out and that opportunity has been taken advantage of. Um, so I think I have to use it because there's so often where I wish I'd got involved earlier or I wish I was aware of something earlier that I can say, oh, is there a reason why sustainability wasn't thought of within
Mm,
this? And sometimes the room goes, oh, no, actually, we just didn't think of it. Okay, that's fine. It's gonna happen. We're gonna have another opportunity. So now next time, I know you can, get me involved and we can start to build that into a different process. So I think questions work far better to help people reflect rather than saying sustainability should be here. I think it's far more, yeah, conducive and helpful to work in that way.
that sounds really interesting. Yeah, and again, it's really useful for teachers in schools because that's then an approach they can use either in terms of the operations of their schools, but also with young people asking those
Mm,
questions.
mm,
Maybe this is an interesting point to then move. Like obviously, public transport is a major solution to the climate and nature crisis, and I
mm,
guess that the Trainline kind of sits very well. It's well placed in that it's all about trying to encourage more people
mm,
to use public transport. And I know you're saying that marketing and brand aspect is not necessarily
mm.
part of your explicit role, but I wondered, you know, do you want to talk a little bit more around that space as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's fantastic working for a brand where the opportunity is so incredibly clear. The amount of emissions you can save by taking a train is just mammoth in comparison to taking the car. And I think we've seen such an increase of, numbers of cars per household is just absolutely huge. Um, We've done loads of really cool work with Glastonbury in terms of inspiring people, and a lot of that is telling people they're a climate hero when they arrive, because
Mm,
the way in which you want to do it and what works best is actually rewarding people when they've taken a certain action rather than spending too much time convincing them to do it. Sometimes, and what we've found actually a huge decision factor for people taking the train isn't often because it's environmental, it's often based on cost and convenience, and also the experience they're having. And that's a lot that's out of our control in terms of delays and other pieces. What we can do, though, is play a really good role in making sure that we're there for when they need to hear the latest about train journeys, that we're able to suggest them, that we're able to give them flexibility, that we're able to get them refunds when it makes sense to do so. That's the role we can play in making sure that they have a very, very clear digital experience. But the other role we can play is saying, well done. And a big part of that is our sustainability story. So if you go into the app, you'll be able to see how many emissions you've saved. We've given people, yeah, lots of congratulations based on doing that. And we find that works far more by saying, well done, thank you, kind of keep it up rather
Mm.
than, please do this, because it's not a main reason to consider the journey first of all, but congratulations is a huge part of building a habit. And that's why, see all these habit books that say make sure you reward yourself when you've started to make a change. It's just a huge part of making sure it continues.
Yeah, that sounds great. I saw that actually. Some of the social media that came out of the Glastonbury, sorry, the
Mm,
celebration piece of people as they'd arrive, kind of being, or in the queue being celebrated. I think because yeah,
yeah.
like you say, in the UK, and this is not necessarily true of other countries, trains are sort of seen as a lesser, kind of less good, individual car ownership. You want to be able to have that autonomy, whereas
Yeah.
in other parts of the world, that's not true. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is tricky. And I think yeah, yeah, it's an interesting one. Um, I
the
mean,
thing I was going to say, sorry, as well, is that the train line is all about sort of accessibility as well, and that is also a key part of sustainability and the idea of making it as affordable as possible and
mm,
making it as easy as possible for people to be able to access these sorts of things. And that's, I
yeah.
guess, a key part of all of this.
Yeah, exactly. We've actually done some quite clear projects on that because I think what people also don't maybe think about enough is that sustainability is about the environment, but it's also about, social
Mm,
elements and people and taking care of our people. And it's really about looking at the world in a completely different way. And if we didn't design just for one quick solution, how would we design it? If we do take trains, for example, they've been built very much to get people from A to B, but what if they were built in a way to create social connection and to foster a sense of community? That might look like a very different type of chain. And so sustainability is very much focused on environment, but also the people aspects and also prosperity, to make sure that there's kind of, yeah, shares of wealth across multiple groups of people. I've gone off on a tangent there,
No,
but
no,
I'm
no.
trying to
It
remember your
sounds great.
question.
That's really relevant. I think maybe this is a good moment though to almost take a complete U-turn and step back and think about your own journey.
Mm.
So, how did you come to be in this role? Kind of, what's your career background?
Yeah, a bit of an interesting one. So I studied psychology and then I went into management consulting. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I think that's why a lot of people go into management consulting, because you want to learn what jobs are, right? You want to go out into the world and you want to understand industries, you want to understand types of projects and types of roles, and so consulting would give me that. So I joined Accenture and I was part of talent and organization there, which was very much talking about how do you change people's habits and ways in which they work and think, and lots of pieces around inspiring leaders. I then kind of actually went into HR, more specifically working on the people focus pieces, but it was never really giving me this meaning that I kind of wanted to do, that I wanted to have in my role. You spend so much time at work. I wanted to feel inspired by what I was doing. I then joined another consulting company. I kept doing kind of people and talent or organizational projects in terms of in the learning space. And that led me into this segue in terms of how do you speak to leaders to get them excited about sustainability, and how do you create this opportunity and this excitement around hope and this thing that we can all get behind and how it can bring people together rather than this scary kind of burning platform piece. And it was all about that was the segue, how do you make change happen from those people projects, that people are the center to any change project or any transformation or anything that you do. And so that was the segue into it. And I think at the time I was having kind of huge amounts of climate anxiety
Mm,
and it was keeping me up and it was worrying me. And I think the main piece that happens there is you just feel helpless. And so I thought, okay, well, if I at least work in it, hopefully I'll feel like I'm doing something. And it's a tiny, tiny slice of the overall pie, but I won't feel as helpless. And I think in tandem with my niece being born, I just thought I want to leave the world in a slightly better, or I want to say to you, hey, this is what I'm doing, and
mm,
I want you to feel that someone's trying or people are trying. And um that was quite inspiring. So I started doing my master's at the University of Sussex in sustainable development, and just started to. I think it's very lucky in consulting because you can segue your projects really that you do into a certain area that you're interested in. So I started working on projects with clients. And I probably should have said that up front in terms of like, in consulting, you're working with different clients, and I was working on projects to do with their strategies of social impact and their sustainability strategies. How do they make change happen? And then got my role at Starbucks, where I looked after sustainability and social impact for the UK. Um, and it kind of just went from there. I haven't looked back. I absolutely love it. It's
Mm,
so purposeful but broad, and meaningful and complex, which keeps it really interesting. There's no real silver bullet in sustainability. You're always doing the best that you can. And
mm.
yeah, that's kind of been my journey, but I absolutely love it.
Starbucks is an interesting one because both the scale of the organization, but also then in terms of what they're doing, there are some key sustainability aspects there, aren't there? Both in terms of I guess the milk and the cups, and there's really tangible things around that space. What was it
Yeah.
you're doing at Starbucks? Sorry, what was that?
So a lot of that was focusing around actually cups and cup reuse. That's what
Okay.
got me into that
Hmm.
area. And lowering of greenhouse gas emissions within the milk production chain, making sure we had accurate alternatives and that we were advertising those alternatives that alternative milks, sorry, that are lower. And then a lot about the coffee supply chain as well. So and also working with our charity partner NHS charities together at the time. So yeah, it's fascinating actually because it's completely different to the supply chain at Trainline. So you do have to constantly pivot. Um, but yeah, a lot of it was on reuse, and that's what got me into reusables, which is a whole other sustainability world in and of itself. Reusable cups, returnable packaging. And I launched a project with called Borrow Cup in Glasgow, which was essentially a kind of returnable cup project where you could borrow a cup from a participating store for a deposit and then drop it off.
Mm,
And it was all looking at, how do you wash it in a way that still makes sure when you compare it to single use, it's still lower
mm.
environmentally. And yeah, there's a whole other world of kind of cups and
Yeah.
policies and plastic packaging tax and pieces, which is very different to the greenhouse gas world. So it's incredibly interesting and varied.
Yeah, I think it also conveys that complexity as well.
Mm,
And I guess you were nudging into there that the often what might be perceived as the simple solution is actually not, and it's quite a complex picture. And
mm,
yeah,
mm,
the other piece I was just
yeah.
going to say as well is that it's really interesting to hear that companies like the Trainline or Starbucks that are very mainstream. Very, you would think of these as very normal businesses, but are
Mm,
very conscious of sustainability, that they have people within the organization who are responsible for that. And I think that's a lesson for schools and for teachers to
mm,
understand that actually this is just ubiquitous, that every organization has got this, and
mm,
and it's something that's much more mainstream than maybe some people might
mm,
consider. Was it?
mm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think the role that employees play in that is huge. We've got such an amazing group of employees at Trainline who are so passionate about sustainability, who hold me and the brand to account. And I think regardless of the role that you play, my role is corporate on the more compliance and reporting almost side versus the, transformational project side that I did at Starbucks, which is slightly different. The similarities across every single role I've done in sustainability is how do you inspire the people that you work with and the employees that you work with, and how do you make it meaningful for them and see the opportunity in their role? And also, just as a consumer, right? Every employee at a company is a consumer who goes out into the world and takes certain actions and does certain things. And
Mm,
it's so important just to say, there is something you can do, and to do something rather than nothing is always the message. And when you do that something, someone else might see you do it, and it creates change. And so no matter the sustainability role that you have, the people that you work with are so incredibly vital, and inspiring them to learn about it or do whatever they can is always going to be part of sustainability, I think, because people make change happen, really.
yeah. That sounds like a really good piece of advice. I mean, just to finish as well, though, is there something more in terms of a careers focus, though, that, almost as if you could talk to you as a school child or kind of when you were younger, is there a piece of
Yeah.
advice that you think, oh, I wish a teacher had told me this, or I wish I knew this?
I mean, I think it would be amazing if we can bring to life some of those roles for students and for children in terms of what it looks like to actually work in sustainability. I mean, that the industry has had a huge increase of people who are studying this and who are in the workforce working on these projects now. But I still think those roles aren't completely clear, sorry, in terms of what they do and what they mean. And I think it would be great if you said, if you asked a child, are you interested in working in sustainability? Do you know what that means? Do you know what that looks like?
Mm.
That means being a generalist and knowing a bit of something about everything and working internally in a business. Or it means being a professional greenhouse gas footprint provider. Or it means working in offsetting and credits and investing in projects that are going to reduce or avoid emissions. Or it means working in waste reduction. Or it means working in reusables. Or it means working in water. The projects within sustainability are so huge and vast. And I think there might be people who are really interested in working in, um, I don't know, within maybe being an engineer, but they don't know the roles that are
Mm.
associated with engineering and sustainability. And so I think if people could lay that out, I think it would be so inspiring because it's not just working in sustainability all the time, it's working within a certain project. Um, and some types of roles will inspire others that won't inspire other children or students. And so I think we could do better to talk about those, make them clear, know that they're established, well-created workforces and industries that exist for these roles now, and help people find the right educational routes for them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, the teachers are making efforts to do that, but there's so much more
Yeah.
that can happen both. And also that's linking lots of these industries into schools and giving opportunities for people to be able to sort of talk to young people and share their jobs and roles and what they're doing. Um, I'm going to say thank you so much, Sarah.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing all of
No
that
worries.
advice. It's been
I
really
think,
interesting to hear both more about the train line, but also about your own journey as well. Yeah, thanks so
yeah, no
much.
worries. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.